There's about to be a new effort against legalizing marijuana. It's being led by retired Rhode Island Congressman Patrick Kennedy, son of the late Senator Edward Kennedy. The 8-term Democrat is taking aim at what he sees as knee-jerk support for marijuana legalization among his fellow liberals. Kennedy, a self-confessed former OxyContin addict, plans to unveil the efforts of the group that he's heading at a news conference Wednesday in Denver. That effort comes after the November election saw voters in Washington state and Colorado become the first in this country to approve measures to tax and regulate pot sales for recreational use. Back with me now, our panel of journalists: Jake Sherman, congressional reporter for Politico; Noam Scheiber, senior editor for The New Republic. Noam, let me start with you. Legalization backers have argued that the so-called war on drugs launched in 1971 by former President Nixon has been an abject failure, that it hasn't stemmed marijuana use and has instead saddled otherwise law-abiding pot smokers with criminal records that keeps them from getting a good job. Are we witnessing a paradigm shift in this country with regards to decriminalization or even legalization?
Well, I think we're witnessing a paradigm change. I wouldn't quite, or a change. I wouldn't quite refer to it as a paradigm shift. I think the analogy with gay marriage is actually very instructive. Both of them poll sort of roughly the same. You have slightly more Americans who favor legalization than oppose, slightly more Americans who favor gay marriage than oppose, and the age demographics tell the whole story. 18 to 29, wildly popular, both. Sure. 30 to 44, pretty popular. Then as you get up through the demographics until 65 and up, then it starts to become very unpopular. And so people have theorized in both cases that as the young cohorts age, these things will become progressively more popular. I don't actually think that's right. I think gay marriage will continue to become very much more popular as people interact with gay and lesbian Americans. They're not going to forget that they're just ordinary people just like them as they get older. But I think with pot and with drug legalization generally, I think it's a different trajectory. I think you do, even if you're open to it as a younger person, as you get older, you have kids, they become teenagers. Sure. You tend to become a little more conservative on the issue as you age. So I don't think the paradigm is going to radically shift. I think it's just going to be a kind of baby steps, over the coming decades.
Jake, the Department of Justice, of course, still developing a policy with regard to the new state laws passed in Colorado, passed in Washington state, which violate federal law. What do you think the Obama administration will ultimately decide to do about those states that have legalized pot, essentially?
The administration has signaled many times that they're not going to prosecute people in states where marijuana is legal, but it's important to note that this is not something that Washington is going to take up anytime soon, especially in Congress. Republicans who are in control in the House see it as kind of going off on a tangent. They don't want to take this up, and it even splits Democrats, so it's not really an issue that you find a lot of unity on. So it's a long way from being an issue in Washington, in Congress. But the president's getting a lot of pressure on both sides of the equation, both to prosecute people who are illegally smoking marijuana and selling marijuana, and to not. So it's something that's a hairy issue right now that we don't really see any resolution to.
I do find it particularly interesting, Noam. Obviously, Patrick Kennedy, we know of his history with drugs. He does want cancer patients and others with serious illnesses to be able to obtain marijuana, but in a more regulated way. He also wants increased funding for mental health courts and treatment of drug dependency as well, so that those who are caught using marijuana might avoid incarceration and get help. Any chance that this becomes an issue that does pick up some bipartisan support?
Well, I think what will have support is this idea that we should, if we were to take further steps toward legalization, we should not just use it as an opportunity to save money. Obviously, the war on drugs is very expensive, and people argue that that money has been wasted. I think it would be a mistake, and I think there's probably a lot of political support for the idea that it would be a mistake just to try to take that money and refund it as tax debts or something. I mean, you would want to, as former Representative Kennedy has suggested, redirect that money towards treatment, toward helping people who have had drug problems find jobs and reintegrate them into the mainstream. So I think that, to the extent that he's trying to accomplish that, I think it's a very healthy force in this debate.
Politico's Jake Sherman, The New Republic's Noam Scheiber. Thanks to both of you. Do appreciate your time.